Today with us we have Ramah Johnson, Michael Liggins, and Angela Jones from Richmond Public Schools. And we want to give them an extra thank you for being here on a snow day for Richmond Public Schools. They found your way. And also say that we're all appreciating the irony of having this conversation on a day when Richmond Public Schools have been closed 7 of the last 10 days. So we will have that conversation together. So thank you very much for coming, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. What time? Oh, good afternoon. Have to check. So the biggest challenge for us was not coming on a snow day. It was getting around your campus and finding the building. Doesn't matter how many times we get on this campus, we drive that same circle every time. Thank you all so much for having us. Once again, I'm Angela Jones. I'm the Director of Student Services for Family and Community Engagement in Richmond Public Schools, which is a brand new department. Although I've been in RPS for many, many years, Family and Community Engagement is a brand new department for Richmond Public Schools this school year. So we are just about 6 months into our infancy right. For developing this program, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. I am joined today by Michael Liggins.
Mm-hmm. I'm Mike Liggins, Senior Violence Prevention and Attendance Specialist.
And Ramah, because I just learned, I said it right this time? I just learned that I've been saying it wrong for 5 years. But I learn, I'm a slow learner, but I get there.
Good afternoon, Ramah Johnson, and I am the Department Head School Chairperson for Student Support Services at John Marshall High School, and I'm a school counselor. So thank you for having us. We're very excited to be here.
Yes, thank you. What we thought we would do today is I thought I would open it up with giving you kind of an overview of Richmond Public Schools and kind of the discussion about attendance and give us a chance to tell you a little bit about what we're doing in our district and then hear the questions from you. It's one of the things that we discovered. I actually am trained a psychologist. I entered Richmond Public Schools as a traditional school psychologist and was given the opportunity several years ago to transition into the world of truancy. And that was an education that no 4-year college or 4 years of graduate school could give me. It's a brand new education. A lot of the stuff I learned was from Mr. Liggins right here, because although he's cleaned up and nice in his tie today, this is a true street man. He works those back alleys of the city of Richmond where most people don't dare to go, and he took me down some of those alleys and wasn't sure I was going to come back out, but it is quite an education for me to try to get our children engaged in those seats at school. So you have the clicker, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I got
all right.
clicker.
So we're going to talk to you a little bit about Everyday Counts, which is our current campaign for attendance within Richmond Public Schools. But I want to tell you a little bit about. You can go to the next one. I'm sorry. Just in terms of Richmond Public Schools, we have about. This is a brief snapshot, but we have about 23,000 students. 26 elementary schools. I have one charter school because I forgot that we actually have 2 now. Right. We have a second charter school that we opened recently. And given all of our challenges, it is also important to note that we do have 2 high schools that are among the state's top public high schools and recognized by U.S. News and World Reports. In terms of our ethnic breakdown, we are 80% African American, despite the fact that the city is something like 50% African American. Our school system is definitely heavily minority. The minority is the majority. And our Hispanic population has risen to 9% and is quickly growing. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if we're getting closer to 11 or 12 at this point, just within the school year. Another thing that's real important to note when you're thinking about our population is that our exceptional education population is 18. It's actually closer to almost 20% now. Nationwide, we're looking at 12. So we are a heavy special ed population. In some of our schools, and I don't know what John Marshall is.
We're at 33%.
At 33% special ed, and some of our schools are as high as 39%. That's an enormous amount of exceptional ed. And additionally, another thing to note is that our economically disadvantaged, which is often measured by poverty rates and free and reduced lunch, we are at almost 78%. That is well over the majority of our population falling into that range of poverty. Those are significant variables to keep in mind as we're talking about the challenges of having children come to school every day. coming to school armed and ready for education. So we already have some challenges ahead of us. And one of the last things I wanted to point out was our homeless population. Our last count, we had 1,700 children identified as homeless, McKinney-Vento. And I want to point out that identified means that somehow they identified themselves to us. We know that that is a severe underrepresentation of the people who are doubled up in grandma's house or living in someplace else that they won't tell us, are afraid to tell us, living in cars or under a bridge or under a bush. And so we know, but we do know that that's probably a severe underreporting. 1,700 is a large number of children. And again, I add that because as we talk about attendance, there's so much more involved. That was part of my education when I moved into truancy and attendance, because I kept saying, if you tell them to go to school, why don't they go? I did. This whole notion of not going was foreign to me. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know kind of like what our schools look like. The next thing I wanted to share with you is basically the attendance terms. When we start talking about attendance, I wanted to share with you what kind of data we track and kind of so that we're all on the same page. Because one of the things we did learn is that a truant in Virginia may not match what a truant is in Maryland, which may not match what a truant is in California. So I want to talk to you about what Richmond specific is looking at and kind of what some of the national trends are. We personally, because it comes out of our office, but we track actually 3 data points. And in terms of, we look at average daily attendance, which is a universal defined piece. That is the % of students who are active on your rolls, who attend school each day. And for some states, not Virginia, it is used for allocating funding on a daily basis, meaning I'm going to pay you if you have 95% of your children in school every day. We are not on a daily funding kind of thing. We do look at membership. Membership does drive our funding, but it doesn't mean that we're going to get penalized because Mike was out today. And truancy. Truancy typically refers to unexcused absences. It is defined by each state individually, and in Virginia, sometimes it's defined in each district differently. So in Richmond, we define truancy as 10 unexcused absences in a school year, okay? Some of our districts, some of the surrounding districts use as low as 5, and we have some other districts that are using as many as 20. So and I say that because when you hear rates, sometimes we're not exactly comparing apples to apples. Bottom line is a truant is a child who's out of school any given time when they're supposed to be in school. But the last data point is chronic absences, and that is a brand new data point that is kind of taking the education world by storm, and you talk about attendance. And that's really looking at attendance a little differently. It's looking at the percentage of children who miss school for any reason, where truancy only focused on those kids who have unexcused absences. So if you had a parent that was really good at calling every day and saying, Rama's out for asthma every Friday, nobody's looking at her because we excused them all away. Where chronic absences, we're looking at any reason you're out of school, whether it's family vacation after tax season, or it's the flu, or it's suspension, or it's skipping in the streets because I didn't feel like coming, whatever the reason. And what we're seeing is that a chronic absent is defined by missing 10% of the school year. In Richmond, we have 180 days of school, 181, well, we're down about 7 right now. But so for us, it would be missing 18 days of school in the school year for any reason. Okay? All right, Mike. And just to share where we are in our school district, our attendance rate is currently 93%. That's across all of our schools, okay? And I will be, and to be very transparent and honest, we have one elementary school we're working with right now because their attendance rate is only 79%. That means 21% of their kids are out of school on any given day. That's a tremendous amount of elementary schools. We have other schools that are sitting at 98%. They balance out, we end up with a 93% attendance rate. District goal is 95%, just so that you know. So we are still, even with that, a little bit below. Of course, we would love to say 100, but we do know people do get sick. And we really don't want those nasty germs in our, in our buildings, making me sick or anybody else. In terms of truancy rate, and please remember, this is the % of children with 10 or more unexcused absences, and this is school-age children only. And I didn't say that before. In Virginia, compulsory school age is 5 by September 30th through 17 years, 11 months, 30 days. So it's 5 to 18. And our rate is 10% as of last year, approximately. And I say that because we have a new student database system and the calculations may be slightly off, but it's hitting around 10%, which is unacceptable, unacceptable by our means. And we've gone up in the last 3 years pretty significantly. We've gone down to about 7% and we've gone back up the last 3 years. District goal is 5%. And for many of our surrounding districts, that would be unacceptable. We're just trying to get down to 5%. Obviously, we don't want a truancy rate. We don't want children out of school for no reason, but this is kind of where we are. And then the new data point that we're tracking, chronic absence rate, is 13%, 13.7, and this is based on all of our students with 18 or more absences for any description. Nationwide, because that is a standard definition, nationwide it is about 14%, so we are looking like the rest of the nation pretty much on that. But that is a very large concern, and when we start pulling data now, like we're pulling data now, and we have a large volume of children who've already hit that threshold. Well, this is based on a full school year. If we have children who by January and February have already missed 10% of a school year and we've only had half, we have a long ways to go. But that's kind of where Richmond looks in a nutshell. Any questions about that before I move off of Richmond? Okay.
So are you saying that if you combine the truancy rate and the chronic absence rate, you're looking at close to 24%?
Well, you wouldn't do that.
No.
You wouldn't combine that because the children who are, they're really not the same. But when you look at chronic absences, that includes our unexcused kids as well as our excused kids. It includes everybody.
Okay.
So those truancy children should be captured in there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yes, and even with attendance and truancy, they're not an inverse of each other. They're all separate data points. That's a good question, though. Okay. So we started looking at why are our children absent? Why are they missing so much? And this is very anecdotal, and it does match a lot of the research. And when I say it's anecdotal, it's because we have a crew of people of 22 officers, attendance officers who are on the street and talking to parents and children, and we're gathering what do they say as to why they're not in school, or what do we gather from the conversation as to why they're not in school? And you know from many conversations with children, it's trying to get them over the graduation mark. But there were basically 4 basic areas: family, school, economics, and student individual reasons. And it could be anything from parent mental health. We have a tremendous issue, and it's very true in most urban areas. We have a tremendous issue with parents suffering from mental health, which impacts the entire family experience. And in that, we also would include drug and alcohol issues, poor supervision, and a lot of parents had a horrible experience with schools themselves. And when you have a horrible experience, you pass a message of horrible experiences on to your children. And we often talk about when do children actually disengage from school. And there are studies out there, there are a lot of studies well, let me ask you, what age do you think children begin disengaging from school? Middle school? Is that general consensus? 3rd grade.
3rd grade.
3rd grade, and there are actually studies that are out there that are now saying a lot of disengagement happens in utero because the messaging from the parent, they never get the message to engage. We have parents that sends kids to preschool and kindergarten for daycare, not for education. That's a very different message. And so what looks like engagement early on is not an educational engagement as opposed to an engagement into a facility to place my child. It's a very different message that we're delivering to kids. Schools are not off of the table as to why children disengage or miss school. It's often the information is irrelevant. They don't get the purpose. They don't see the link to them as an individual, both to families and children. If they're already not achieving well, they don't engage and don't come in. Illiteracy or just plain old poor reading skills. And this is why I say 3rd grade, because children can kind of roll through 1st and 2nd. 3rd grade, the education shifts. The curriculum actually shifts. We're no longer reading for sight word recognition. We're now reading for comprehension. It's a different purpose. And kids, it's a big make or break year. It's a big year. I know when I was practicing as a regular psychologist and did a lot of testing, I know that was the year that we got hit a lot for what we call child study or special ed evaluations, because that's when we started seeing the critical reasoning skills weren't there, the analytical reasoning, starting to see that shift. Conflicts with staff. Kids just don't get along with the staff. Staff don't necessarily know how to engage properly with children. And a lack of a meaningful relationship. We know one of the main things that keep kids engaged and attached to schools are at least one good relationship with one adult. Somebody who shows that they care, on top of parents. Economics, all of the things that we just kind of talked about, the need to work, the need to provide childcare for siblings, those who have children. I know you do a lot of work with teen parents in terms of trying to make sure all those needs are cared for on top of trying to be in school. It's very, very difficult. You know, as a working parent, adult, it's hard to get your kids. I struggle every day getting my kids out the door, and and for a high schooler who has to be in school at 7:30 in the morning to make sure their baby is someplace in place, and they may or may not have the support of their parent, their co-parent, or their own parents. So we have we talked about the homeless. We were just discussing hunger. Hunger is huge, and you think that should not be a conversation in the United States of America. Our children come to school hungry. We talk, we talk a lot about, everyone knows Maslow's basic hierarchy of needs kind of thing. You know, the bottom line, the theory of making sure your needs are met. If you if you haven't had your nourishment met, basic food, basic shelter, everything else is off the table. And we have children who are coming to us as they are. And so when you're hungry, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. There's nothing that you can do to say to me that's going to make me engage in learning how to read if I'm hungry. That's what the last thing. And some of our children, we were just talking about how rough Mondays are. And this is going to be really rough for us because, as you pointed out, 7 out of 10 days kids haven't been in school. Some of our children will not have eaten, and they will come on Monday. And when I say haven't eaten, I don't mean they ate a Pop-Tart and that was it. I mean haven't eaten, because we are near the end of the month, which means your food stamps have run out. The TANF, temporary aid for needy families, checks have run out. This is a critical time. So not only is this bad for us, for academics, it's critical because we have children who are hungry, who are in homes that don't have heat. And so the issues just compound. High mobility, and you mentioned this, I think, in your opening. We have an extremely, in Richmond, highly mobile population. We are looking at something like 30 to 40% of our children will move at least once during the school year. Many of them move 2 and 3 times. And that's when we can keep up with it and when we know that that's happening. For a large number of reasons, those kinds of moves happen. What we know is children have more success when they have the benefit of one educational placement throughout their entire career. Even our well-resourced children. If you have one consistent educational placement and then you move to middle school, you do that same track and you stay in one middle school. We have children who have been in 9 and 10. We have children who have done the tour of our high schools. We have 5 comprehensive high schools. They've been in every single one of them. And that's hard to keep up
As
with.
a sophomore or a junior.
As a sophomore or a junior,
Yeah.
right. And then the student issues that we have, drugs and alcohol, student mental health. Then there's the good old fashioned, my hair isn't done, my shoes don't, they're talking about my shoes, my clothes don't look right. There's pregnancy. And one that we're really being hit really hard with this year are the bullying, but really gang. We're having a tremendous increase in gang activity this year in the city of Richmond. And it is really exhausting our resources. I'm trying to keep on top of them. But it's serious, and it keeps children out of school. Not only the children involved in the gangs, but the children who are on the periphery or the innocent bystanders who just want to come to school and don't feel comfortable when all of the police have swarmed in on your school, or don't like the fact that they have to walk through a metal detector every day, or that the school is going to be shut down for 30 minutes so we can run the dogs through. All the things that we do to make sure that we're being safe don't necessarily make people feel good. And so just sharing that kind of with you. Again, the list is not exhaustive. There are as many different reasons for truancy as there are truant children. as soon as we think we have a comprehensive list, we'll get another
Right.
reason. Something else just will come up that we just don't even know. We had a family last year that we intervened with, and it took quite a bit. We had two families, but one where we had a 14-year-old, a 9-year-old, and a 6-year-old who never been to school ever.
Yep.
Ever. And when I say ever, I mean ever. And so getting them in school, I'm looking at Mike because we worked with this. It was like April that we were given a call from a community and went out. And it was like April we were getting them enrolled in school. So the first thing the school is saying, what do I do with this? And but on top of everything else, we're thinking, oh, they're so educationally behind. These children were socially behind. They did not know how to enter a classroom and sit down at a desk and even have the expectation to sit for an hour to receive a lesson, let alone even know what that information was. So those, like I said, something new every day.
Right. Then they ran across the hunger part because the neighbor was feeding them every day. Because she said she got tired of seeing them walking up there in the street. But she didn't feel, she felt a little guilty of calling us for us to intervene or the police to intervene because she thought the kids would be taken away from the parent. And what we ended up doing was going around about talking to the neighbors first, then getting the kids. And he had a 14-year-old daughter was in there. She didn't look like she was 14, but it had a boyfriend
It
in the
was
house.
mom's boyfriend.
Yeah, we thought was messing with her anyway, but she was so far behind. I mean, she read like on the 3rd grade level or something like that. So putting her in a high school was real hard. It was real hard.
Okay. Okay, Mike, I'm sorry. I'm good, yeah. So what do we do when we have this host of issues presented to us? And we were talking about, 10% of our school population looking at truancy, and another 5% looking at dropping out, having dropped out. What do we do? What we are doing is kind of trying to do a tiered intervention where we are looking at universal, and this is kind of a basic tiered intervention that a lot of effective programs are following these days. But we're trying to do some preventive things where we're doing some campaigning, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but at a universal level. We are trying to identify in this middle group students who are at risk, who are at the early on the front end of demonstrating problems with school attendance, and put some intervention programs for them in place. And the reality is the intervention programs aren't necessarily attendance focused. They're focused on the other social needs. So you got to have a good assessment about what's going on. And the academic needs, because there are children who just don't go because they aren't getting the academic pieces that they need. And then the top program is the top tier is the recovery programs, and those are for the kids who are really demonstrating problems. Let me tell you what one of our challenges is in our district. We have so many children that fit that top that our pyramid is actually inverse, where we're supposed to be doing the bulk of the work to keep this from ever happening. We are having to put so much energy and time into these children who are at the tip of this iceberg, and because the volume is so large, that's been really one of our hugest challenges. Because the more time that we have to put up here, and I'm not saying it's not worth the time, the more these children start to filter into that area. You know, we're missing that group. Like I alluded to the gang problems that we're having. We have so much time and energy being spent on the children committing these egregious acts that we're missing the children that kind of slip away, who kind of said, I'm not going to come today because I don't want to see this again. You know, and the ones who were on track and doing well, and then 2 weeks later they're no longer on track, and we all kind of missed them. And I say that just to be honest, because that really is what happens. And it was one of the things when I told you our program was new this year, and we hired 22 people to be on the street, and everyone's like, gosh, that's a ton of people. Yes, it is. And it is a ton of people, and we are swamped. We are swamped. There are some basic code requirements, Virginia code, that we have to do, like every child that misses 5 unexcused days has to have a door knock and an intervention plan. And so we were at approximately 5,000.
Right, about 5,000.
No, we had completed about 5,000. We are 1,000 in the hole.
Yeah.
And every day they're hitting more. And so that is just an obscene amount of children who are not in school on a regular basis. Some of it is computer error. Some of it's teacher error. I mean, I'm not going to say that, but the majority isn't. The majority isn't. Go ahead, Mike. Okay, so just some key messages before I turn this over to let somebody else talk is that obviously good attendance keeps children well, they do well in school and eventually in the workplace. We send this message to parents all the time. School is a training ground for work. Children who do not go to school do not hold a job. If you don't train them and practice that you got to get up and be someplace on time and all those kinds of things, they simply don't go to school. I mean, they cannot hold a job. And people don't say that because they'll say, oh no, once I get a paycheck, it's all done. You want to think that, on top of the fact that you don't have the skills. But the reality is, if you haven't trained yourself up to have that kind of responsibility and to push through life even when it's hard, then you just simply don't make for good employees. Absences add up, excused and unexcused. This whole notion that we have to look at the excused absences more and not be so eager to excuse them. One of the things that we noticed is, and you probably have noticed, is that we're dealing with trying to get children to graduate. So all of a sudden we're looking at their school records comprehensively at grade 11 and 12. And then we notice this child that is barely holding on in 11th grade didn't go to school as a kindergartner. But we tend to excuse babies away. Oh, they get sick. Oh, and so we're really, one of the things we're doing as a district this year is stopping excusing all that. These kids, we easily have 5 and 6 year olds with 50, 60, 70 days out of school. And a lot of those were excused. If you are sick that much, you should be in a hospital. Or something to that extent, or we should have some kind of a plan in place for you. One of the things that we do know, and why we're really looking at this chronic absenteeism, is that there are a couple of studies that were just recently done out of Johns Hopkins in Baltimore and UCLA, and one of the things we've discovered is, what they have discovered is that children who miss 10% of the school year, those 18 days, are instantly, and it doesn't matter when it happens, kindergarten, 1st grade, 10th grade, if it happens in 1 year, you're instantly at a 30% less chance to graduate, ever. And what we know is children who do this 1 year will do it again. And you start compounding and you're up to 60, 70% chance of never graduating. And so one of the things we are also doing is helping our elementary schools to understand how much their work impacts the end product. Because it's one of the things we have, it seems like it's intuitive, it seems like it's obvious, but we haven't treated it that way. And so we have to be real purposeful that at kindergarten, if we have a child that's missed 20 days of school, we have already set them on the bad track. And if we allowed this to go and no one addressed it, I'm not saying we can't fix it. I'm not saying that we can't put some things in place, but we're already in a bad place. And this is actually true of our well-resourced people as well. This is true across the board. Difference is our well-resourced people have the ability often to get in whatever they need to get in to get it done. Okay. And just note also the notion that missing school, children who miss school, doesn't just impact them, it impacts the children in the class for the children that come every single day. They are disruptive when they come back, whether it's behaviorally or it's because I have to stop what I'm teaching to get you back up to speed. And so it impacts everybody. Go ahead, Mike.
Okay.
Thanks. We know we need to monitor this. It's a problem. One of the things that we also are doing is really embracing attendance as a community issue. It is not a school issue. It is a community issue. We need a community that says school attendance is important. We need a community that says, I need you all to be well trained so you can become the good taxpayers in our city. We need schools to produce people we can hire. And so it really is a community issue. And obviously it can close achievement gaps. Okay, one more, Mike, I think. And one of the things that we're trying to push as a message is that chronic absences is like the check engine light in your car. You wouldn't dare ignore it. And the longer you ignore it, the bigger the bill is going to be in the end when you have to pay to get that car repaired. So we're really trying to say you've got to pay attention to what's going on with our children early and often, because it's rarely, almost never, just about I didn't want to be in school. It's almost always about a deeper issue that we can hopefully address. So, any questions about what I just covered? We do have a campaign going on. There was one? I'm sorry.
I just have a quick one. You mentioned briefly at the meeting that chronic absence includes excused absences, which could include suspension.
Absolutely.
So I'm wondering how our school discipline practices are factoring into this conversation about analyzing chronic absences.
Very good. Good question. So this year, that is a huge issue. Discipline impacts school achievement for all the reasons any day out of school impacts it. So we did actually for our district, and a lot of districts are doing the same thing, we actually completely revamped our code of conduct. This year, it's now a student code of responsible ethics, but to put in a tiered approach of interventions, where we're looking to do interventions deeper in the classroom, to maintain children in classrooms as much as possible. Now, what I say, that requires a whole lot of things. It requires a lot of training for teachers, particularly teachers who were trained to teach and not behavior modify. And so we have to do that. Also, that's also equipping our teachers with understanding the impacts of trauma and all of the social ills that we just discussed, and using that to leverage some kind of connection and relationship with their children. We are definitely a district that's trying to reduce the number of out-of-school suspensions and out-of-class time. I will say this, we are challenged, correct me if I'm wrong, we are challenged by the seriousness of the behaviors we are being confronted with on a daily basis. Right. And when I alluded to the gang issues, this is more than just a bunch of children walking down a hall and hollering things. We're talking about some pretty violent, egregious behaviors, and those simply cannot stay in a school. So there is some of this. There is some of this going on, and how do we address that, keeping our schools safe and all of those things, and keeping kids in their seats as much as possible. Now, the reality is a lot of our work has to start in preschool. Right. And giving children alternatives and behaviors and social expectations, and because one of the other things we've discovered is that we've spent a lot of time punishing children but not giving them what the socially acceptable behaviors are supposed to be. And so that's a lot of our challenge now, is to equip children. Okay, we told you what we don't want to see, but the reality is they don't actually know what it is we want to see. One of the things our superintendent recently said is, he said, one of the things we have to take out of one of the sentences we have to take is, would you do this at your home? Because the reality is a whole bunch of them would. Yeah, I would. And Mike can tell you the doors that he knocks on, and the kids are fighting their parents, and they responded not too long ago, and we had a mother and daughter literally in the street rolling, fighting on the ground. And so the reality is, this is some of the stuff they're doing at home. So it's a long turnaround. But you're absolutely right. The point that you bring up is absolutely right. We've got to do it. It's got to start early, like everything. It's got to start early, and we're just assuming a lot of the responsibilities. Schools are ended up having to assume a lot of the responsibilities that parents did, and that's a hard thing to do. It's a hard expectation to put on teachers that went to school to teach. But it is kind of where we are. And each school is moving. They have adopted in Richmond positive PBIS, positive behavior intervention systems, and we're being trained by specialists to come in to assist us with different strategies and interventions that we can do for children, as opposed to just suspending them and sending them out for 2 or 3 days in the street. Other different ways meaningful ways that we can address negative behavior and turn it into a positive thing. So. Right. That's definitely one of them. And I know on PBIS, and one of the other models we're looking at is restorative justice, because a lot of our children don't understand the impact that their behaviors have on other people. I don't know if it's the Xbox generation and the texting, but children are not connecting actions with feelings and emotions, and so a lot of that is trying to restore some of that in those places. No, I'm good. Okay. So we have the Everyday Counts campaign, which I don't know if you want to talk. Yeah, I think there is one more slide. Yeah. That's it. Yeah, so you can.
And I'm going to talk to you briefly about my job that Ms. Jones tasked me to do. I'm basically like a street person. I'm the street person. And like you said, we had 22 officers. It's just like me telling 22 of y'all right now to go knock in some neighborhood you've never been in, don't know what to say. So our goal was to teach them how to interact when they go to the door, what to be looking for. Because we look for, if we walk in the house, like I went in the house one time and the house had about 6 Carson heaters in there. And the house just reeked of that gasoline, just reeked of it. But the kid was not going to school, and then it had an effect on the family. One house I went into, they had a mattress actually at the front door, and 3 guys in there just drinking liquor, halfway dressed and everything. So I had to teach them how to go into situations like that. Still be professional, still stay on focus, but I'm looking at everything around me at the same time. If I have to come back and report it, call Child Protective Service or anything like that, we do a lot of that on our end too. But you got to go into a focus that you're not going to say, well, I'm calling Child Protective Service, because you have to go in that neighborhood probably next week, and you got to be smart how you're doing it. Another task that we do, like you say, everyday camp. That came about that Ms. Jones and I and some more officers were sitting at the table one day, and we said we keep attacking this animal from the top. And we keep worrying about high school and keep worrying about middle school because they're worrying about the graduation rate. But then we kept on finding the behavior starting off earlier and earlier. I mean, we had kids in the first grade walking in the hall, kicking and hitting on teachers. We had a little boy about a year ago walking in the hall. The teacher said, "Pull your pants up, son." And he said, "My daddy told me, when you start paying for my clothes, then you can tell me how to wear my clothes." And he was a little itty bitty thing. So that's the stuff that we're going through right now. So basically, when we go through a whole lot of stuff, like I got a flyer right here, which is on the board right here. Going to neighborhoods. Actually, we go in there and we train our officers. We go in there with them because sometimes, like, this is shell shock to them. They've never been in a situation like this. In the perfect world, you're supposed to knock at the door, "Ma'am, your son missed some days out of school. What's the problem? Or he been sick. I'm gonna send some notes. He'll be back in school tomorrow." That's not the case. You might go to the house 4 or 5 times before you get the response you need. We take failure to send letters. That's something Ms. Jones do, that we tell the parents, you got 24 hours to get your kid back in school, or we have to take, what, 3 days? 3 days to get them back. I can always cut everything short. We got 3 days to get them back in school, or we'll take you to court. And we actually have to take them to court. It is sad you got to take them to court. But some of them in their mind, their kids, well, my kid don't miss them many days. But if you miss a day this week, next week you miss 2 more days, I mean, you accumulate these days. We had a kid, we had 182 days in school. We actually had a kid had 100 and some days missed out of school.
131.
31 days, 131 days. And it didn't faze the parent at all. You know, it didn't faze the parent. Half our kids don't even take report cards home. So we have to educate the parents when we get there. Have you seen a report card? How is his behavior? When he gets suspended? What he got suspended for? We need to work on all that kind of stuff. So my biggest task every day is teaching these young people we have how to go in the neighborhoods and how to, you know, how to see things. I've seen dead bodies. I'm sorry. I've seen dead bodies. You know, laying in the alley, laying in the doorways, and it just, you know, I mean, I ain't seen them dead. Ain't nobody doing that. I mean, they were just dead. It's just the neighborhoods you go in. We have a poster. We had to come up with posters for our hotline. Our hotline is mainly because we need the community to call us, and parents call us in the morning time, early in the morning, like 6:15. My child refused to get up and we ain't going to school. So we have to send officers there in the morning to get the kids to go to school. It's not like the old days, you go in and forget that part. But that's the old days. But now we go in there, we can't put our hands on them. We tell the parents when we get there, a parent have to be in the house. Man, we can't put our hands on him. We're not going to snatch him out of the bed or none of that good stuff. He have to come with us willingly. But what we do in the process, we taking information, getting to the school, we telling the school attendance workers and the counselors, this kid got such and such a problem. Like Ms. Jones said, our kids got tons of social problems, tons. But and, you know, if you don't address the problem can never get better. So we got a problem. Ms. Jones is real a stickler on it, that we did everything, dot all the I's, cross all the T's, and all this good stuff for us to get the kid from one point to another. Are we 100% successful? Not yet, but we're young, and I think we're going in the right direction. Another thing, that green form, please.
This one? Or this
Yeah, no, that one will be second.
one? Oh, okay.
This right here was a door knocker. We call it door knocker. If I knock at your door and no one home, I put this in there, this stuff starts stating all the laws, I'm going to have you locked up and all this good stuff. And Ms. Jones said, we are no longer going to do this because you cannot leave, you can't get darkness out of darkness. You need light to get out of darkness. So Ms. Jones came up with this.
I don't know that I came up with
Well, I came up with it.
Okay.
I just give you credit.
I appreciate the back.
We came up with this idea, and this idea is more friendly because it looked like the cable man came to your house. And they like this, oh, the cable man here. So then once they found out we don't put the kid's name on it, we can put the parents' name on there. because we don't want anybody else to come pick it up and just see the parents' business. So, and then we do get more phone calls back from this than I'm gonna take you to jail.
Yeah.
You know. And what we also came up with is trying to reach parents when we go to the doors and stuff. We had these little magnets that you can put on the icebox, just reminders. You know, son and daughter need to go to school every day. And just stuff like this, they like trinkets. You know, they like that. So we got buttons, and they come in English and Spanish, so we can reach everybody. We do have some bilingual speaking officers, and we know we need to hire some more, but that's where we at right now. It's just a brief overall what I do on a daily basis, other than putting out fires every 5 minutes. Because, you know, we got young people, they get to the door, and sometimes they get frustrated because parents they're gonna curse you out. And I tell them that, you're gonna get cursed out. Because number one, you at my door, you know? And we teaching them, let them vent. I'll be all the big moves, all that kind of good stuff. I'll be all everything you want me to be, Mom. Okay. Now, Mom, I'm here to help your daughter, son or daughter. I'm just here to help. You know, what can I do to help you? And we're trying to get them from point A to point B.
So, and the reality is, despite all the negative things that we talk about, I have never met, maybe one, a parent who didn't want the same thing for their children that I want for mine. It's just a matter of how to get there and how to navigate through their crisis. Our parents live in so many crises. And since the economy has changed, we have more parents facing crises than ever. They live in one fire to the next, and they can't see everything else around. And so our job is to help them navigate through. But never, once you get them calmed down, and I mean, because the reality is, how would you feel if we showed up at your doorstep to question you about your child? You know, we always have to remember, what is that if it were your child? And we do that test all the time. Wait a minute, if this was my child, I'd feel some kind of way. Someone in a uniform knocking on my door to say I didn't do something right. And that's what it is. But parents want the best for their children. It's just a matter of getting there and knowing how to do it and prioritize and understanding these very difficult systems that we as a society have created for people to navigate through. And it's tough. But
and we have a ton of people, parents, grandparents, basically. They're just crying. I mean, crying for help. I mean, physically just crying. I don't know what else to do, you know. So we try to give them a plan. Our 5-day plan is an intervention plan to help the parent, to give them a little guideline. If your son or daughter staying out all night, let's see, can we set a curfew? Let's see, can we cut the TV off a certain time? Let's get them an alarm clock. So we got partners with CIS, communities and schools, and they help furnish some of this stuff. Because like I said, we're trying to build the kid up. So when we have a attendance team meeting, which they do go to, and Ms. Jones might explain that to, is to sit there and try to help the kid overall. And what we're doing with the attendance team, and Ms. Jones probably can tell you what attendance team actually does, but we also came in an agreement that we invite parents to the school, and sometimes they don't come.
most of the time.
I don't have no car, I don't have no transportation, I gotta work, I got all these excuses. Well, we came up with our office, we got a mobile attendance team. And what we're doing now, we are reaching out, we actually take the attendance team, which consists of one of our officers, a CIS worker, and a school social worker, and they actually come to your house, whatever time you say. We try to adjust, whatever time you need to meet, we need to come and meet. And we'll sit there and meet, develop a plan, and try to help you. But you know, it's kind of hard when you tell us to come and you don't be there. And that happens a lot too now, okay?
And I would say from the school counseling perspective, what we do is we build relationships. We build relationships with our students, which allows us to have a open communication and with the families. We will go on home visits also. We have purchased alarm clocks. We've helped try to get students who may have their teenage parents daycare. You know, we take all avenues in order to assist the child, because at the end of the day, you cannot be successful in life without a high school diploma. You cannot be successful you cannot earn a high school diploma without coming to school. So, and we tell our children, I'm here for you, I can help you, I'll do anything I need you to do, but you got to do your part. And your only job is to come to school. You need supplies, we'll buy them for you. You know, we'll have them. We keep notebooks, pencils, papers, anything that's going to eliminate the barriers of children being successful in school. We have that in our school, in our offices, so the child can be successful. Unfortunately, we do run across children that school isn't for them. They don't like school. They're not interested. They don't want to do the English and the math, the science, and the history. So then we have some type of we develop a meeting or an intervention meeting to see what direction do you want to go in. And we ask them. We have the career coach in the meeting. We have the social worker, the counselor, and a teacher. So and a parent, and we all come together and we sit down and we discuss this plan with the child and try to help them see where education can get them to that point. Or some children, they just say, I have to take care of my family. What is it that I need to do that's going to get me out of here, that's going to allow me to get a full-time job so I can provide for my family? And in certain situations of that nature, we've only come across about 4 or 5 where a parent was sick and the child was the sole breadwinner of the family. So, a terminal illness at that. So that child went on to Job Corps and then came back and was able to fulfill his family's needs. But at least he was able to gain a trade, get a GED, and then be able to take care of his family. The children face many different obstacles every day, and our job is to help them to alleviate any barriers in order for them to be successful. Sometimes we have to put children on a half-a-day schedule or a shortened schedule or a late arrival, just so we can make sure that you as a child, you're meeting your needs at home, whether it's a family obligation. More than likely it has to be a family obligation. And then also we're going to meet your needs in an educational environment also. So it's tricky. It's not a lot of wiggle room, but I think that when we call Angela Jones' office and we call Mike Liggins and we say, well, this is the situation and can you go with us here so we can have a better understanding, and then we'll all come together and come up with a solid plan. Mm-hmm. It works. If you, John Marshall's I always say this, Adrian, we're a different school, we're cut from a different cloth. We're more family oriented. So if you say, my mom is sick, we're going to the hospital with you to see your mom. We're going to do anything extra in order for you to not have any other hurdles. So, I saw a hand.
Yeah, I know we only have a few minutes left. First of all, thank you guys for coming and being very transparent, because I think it takes a lot of the data that people read and gives context to it. But I guess for the people in the room, can you maybe speak to, because you guys are doing an excellent job, seems like on a micro level, but there's a macro level that has to do with the inputs that you guys are being asked to deal with on a daily basis. Can you maybe talk to maybe 1 or 2 policy changes, not in the schools, but in society? Because it seems like, given the fact that you guys are dealing with a lot of students who don't have resources, what are 1 or 2 things you think on a policy level that could change in terms of whether that's the economy or jobs or school in and of itself that would impact your work?
I mean, okay, so that is a loaded question, because I think there are major issues starting from Department of Social Services. There's something wrong. This is me personal, okay, but there's something wrong where it is more economically beneficial to not work than to work at McDonald's to support your family. There's something wrong with that inherently, and those kinds of little things start messaging down and impact things like attendance. So I think there are some major policies and supports that you look at in the area of social services that need to be looked at. I think there are major issues like sometimes families have been put in a position where they've had to give up custody of their child in order to receive the services that they need, the true mental health services that they might need for their child or what have you. There's less of that going on today as even just a couple of years ago, but it still does exist. So I think we have to look at those kind of large, I don't know if that's where you're getting at.
I didn't have a specific answer,
Okay.
but I just want, I just think about, when you showed that first slide, there's a lot of, to me,
Tremendous.
there's a lot of resource issues, in terms of people's ability to engage, and you guys are doing a great job of helping them engage. But I think for me, this is not the first time, but it's one time where we hear about the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting, but the true, and from my perspective, the true impact of that. And I wonder, like, if there are things like, whether it's minimum wage possible, like, are there things that would,
Yes.
in your opinion, like, impact,
Yes.
like, the results that I don't know that people necessarily always connect the dots?
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. One of the other things we started last year too, again, this is only City of Richmond, but other districts are doing it too, but we started as stakeholders, where we have the judge, the Commonwealth attorney, social services, business people. We have all major people at the table, for one, to share this data, because people don't know what we're facing. And then to say, okay, so at least for this city, how can the major agencies, because this is a community issue, this is not an RPS issue. So what is it that we can all come together to do? And sometimes it does mean having better partnerships like you all have with, like John Marshall has with U of R, or that kind of thing. I don't think we're where we need to be, because I think your question is tremendous. And I almost think there's almost no policy that can't be looked at that wouldn't impact this in the end. So,
Cool, thank you.
I have another question.
yes.
Do we have time or not? Okay. Well,
Sorry.
I've been hearing in the last
Thank you.
few days from students around the issue of discipline in the schools, and I think that speaks to children and their parents not having a favorable experience at school. So one thing I've heard a lot from our students is the teachers are always screaming at the kids. They just scream and scream and scream, and the kids hear nothing but negativity, negativity, negativity. So I hear that.
Sure.
And then I also talk to people who are teachers, and they say, you know, a kid in my classroom heaved the desk across the room at another child the other
Sure.
day. A kid in my classroom cursed me out in the foulest language in front of the whole class. So I think my question is, obviously this has a bearing on truancy and attendance.
Absolutely.
Because people don't like to be in these kinds of toxic environments.
Exactly.
How does RPS as a school system, are there plans for, you know, what do you do about teachers screaming at kids
Sure.
and kids throwing desks across the room at other kids?
Sure. So one of the things that we're looking at is the whole notion of school climate. And school climate is not just the child throwing the desk, because no matter what, we have to take the children. We get whoever comes through our doorstep.
Right.
But helping to resource our teachers who, in some cases, are burned out and fed up, or haven't necessarily received all the support and training that they need to know how do you engage with a child that's disruptive like this. Because in no way, shape, form, or manner is it okay to scream at the child, regardless of what they're doing.
It's not always the child
And
being
it's-
disruptive. I personally experienced a teacher who was on the edge of being a violent teacher, flipping the desk because
The teacher flipped the desk.
teacher behaved in such a way that I
Yeah.
had to go into the school.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we're looking at too is, you know, we focused a lot on the impact that these issues have had on our children. Our teachers are impacted as well.
Right.
And some of them are coming from these same toxic environments. And so we have to do a better job equipping them with resources, recognizing their needs. You know, we had a pretty serious incident at one of our high schools a few weeks ago, and we had to stop and look and realize that actually in this particular case, our teachers were more traumatized than the children,
Right.
based on what happened at that incident. But we dealt with the children, but no one ever stopped to say, let's help the teachers.
Right.
And then a year from now, that will be the teacher that's flipping the desk, and everyone won't understand why. You know, so it's always a bigger picture in that single moment, but I think we have a lot of work to do to better support, because what you described in both situations is unacceptable.
Right.
And it does, that single incident of flipping the desk for a child will have changed that child's school experience for the rest of their life, in the wrong way.
And that was a hard road. to
That's a
go.
hard.
To trust her teachers.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sounds like we have a whole series of other brownbacks we can. In the interest of time, we're gonna cut it off there for the moment and just say thank you again for coming and giving you some.
Thank you for having me.